Black, brown, and HBCU bound. Your source for news you can use. Let's shine a light on the 207 HBCUs, where culture meets excellence. Of the past to the dreams of today, we're here to guide you every step of the way. For the scholars, the change makers, the voices we see. HBCU pride building history, 207 strong, a legacy profound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. Voices that echo, stories that resound, highlighting the legacy, shining so bright. Empowering futures, igniting the light. Black, brown, and HBCU bound. Building the bridge, breaking new ground. Together we rise, hear the sound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. Scholarship, dreams, and a campus so alive. From culture to courage, where futures thrive. For parents and students, the vision is clear. We've got your back, it's your time of year. Every story we tell, every voice we lift, unlocking potential, the greatest gift. Tune in for the wisdom, the stories untold, the rhythm of progress, the spirit so bold. Your podcast for knowledge, where dreams are unbound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. Voices that echo, stories that resound, highlighting the legacy, shining so bright. Empowering futures, igniting the light. Black, brown, and HBCU bound. Building the bridge, breaking new ground. Together we rise, hear the sound. We're black, brown, and HBCU.
Whoa, that was the second intro, Miss Cole. I am so sorry.
That is
I'm going to have to
okay.
edit that out. Listen, that is the risk you take when you go into a new podcast. I thank you for your patience. And I also see that I have to get on my technical assistant because the picture from the last interviewer is here. So admittedly, that was an error as well. So my apologies to you. Oh, please understand.
That is okay, but I don't know her personally, but I know of Mafia TJ. So
we interviewed her last week. She's wonderful. She's got a wonderful organization.
Yes.
So I'm glad that you know of her, and thankfully you're not offended. But I do want to get into. I want everybody out there in HBC in Black, Brown, and HBCU bound world to know exactly who you are, because you're equally as important, and your mission and the information you'll be providing today is much needed in our community. And I'm hoping that as many people have the opportunity to sign on with us this evening. Also, we'll share enough information so that people can also learn if they're not here, and they can watch it in the playback for months and years to come. So why don't we start? I'm going to have you again, if you don't mind, introduce yourself before we jump into some Q&A.
Okay, not a problem. My name is Shamika Cole.
Mm-hmm.
I have been an educator for over 25 years. I've been a counselor for 23. I started my career off in the Prince George's County public school system in Maryland, and moved to Charlotte, North Carolina in 2015. So I've been here almost 10 years. I'm originally from Los Angeles, California, born and raised. My grandfather went to an HBCU, Clark, Atlanta, and that's kind of what sparked my interest in going to a HBCU, as well as participating in the Upward Bound program at the University of Southern California, where my director purposely, intentionally, every Saturday introduced us to a new HBCU, just because there were no HBCUs on the West Coast. And I fell in love with Howard. And I went to Howard to get my bachelor's of science in psychology with a minor in elementary education, and then went back to get my master's degree in counseling. And so here I am.
Fabulous. There's a lot of Howard churns them out, boy, doesn't they?
Yes.
them out. There's a lot of success. There's a lot of success coming out of all of our HBCUs,
All
which
of
is the
them.
purpose of our group. We are here, and our main focus is to get students in these HBCUs, and being able to bring examples of what graduates from these HBCUs are doing. To me, is one of the prized possessions that we have, because there's a wealth of knowledge, there's a wealth of professionalism in this group, and we want to be able to showcase as much as possible people from the group when we can. Of course, we're going to try to bring people who are not in the group from time to time to share their expertise, but where we can, we want to highlight people who come right out of our group. So thank you for being a
Absolutely.
part of our group. So what I want to do, start by asking, because for people who are new to this topic, what's the difference between an IEP and a 504 plan?
Okay, so it's a lot. So I tried to break it down in, simple, basic information. And so I kind of did a diaphragm, and I'm going to do where I'll tell you what the difference is and then what both of them do, if that's okay with you.
Fabulous. As much
Okay.
information as you can. We want our family to be educated and fortified with information so they can hit the ground running when they step on campus. But go ahead.
Exactly. So with an IEP, it's required because of what we call IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it's an education law. The IEP provides specialized instruction for students. It focuses on what the student is learning. The states receive additional funding for eligible students. And the IDEA identifies 13 categories of disabilities that will qualify a child for an IEP. Also, with an IEP, it only covers students from the age of 3 to 21 up to high school or 21, whichever one comes first. It wasn't designed to go beyond high school. Okay. So when we talk about a Section 504, it's required because of the Rehabilitation Act and the American with Disabilities Act, which we abbreviate ADA. And this is a civil rights law. It provides accommodations. It focuses on how the student is learning, and the state does not receive additional funding, and the person has any disability. Whereas, remember, I said the IEP has 13
Right.
categories.
Right.
So where they both are the same is that parents, excuse me, parents must consent to have their child evaluated. There is no cost to the parent when the school is involved, and it works to meet the needs of the person receiving either plan. So that's pretty much an IEP and a 504 in a nutshell.
Do they give the student the same protections and the same accommodations? Is one stronger than the other? Would there be a reason why a person would rather have an IEP opposed to, or what would you say to somebody who's just wondering, should I go the full IEP route, or should I just have a 504 plan? Because I noticed there's a certain sect of kids that do have 504s, and then the other has IEP. So what do you
Well,
say?
again, like I said, IDEA identifies 13 categories of disabilities that will qualify a child for an IEP. And remember, the focus is on what the student is learning. So, for example, I work in a Title I school, which has a very high IEP population. And although I'm not the lead compliance for IEP, I do sit in some meetings if they are related to my services. And so a lot of our students that I see that have IEPs, they they're below grade level in reading and math. They struggle with processing and comprehension. And so IEP will put specific specialized instruction in place for students with an IEP. And they will have a teacher who either pushes in and or pulls out to work with them on those academic skills or their academic goals. Whereas with the 504, you're just getting accommodations.
Okay, and I noticed with the IEP, with the push in and pull out, I know they like to do it in a least restrictive way, or where it's least restrictive to how they interrupt the student's education on how they deliver services. So I do know that much about it. But
Yes.
yeah, there's so many nuances to this subject. How would you say, how do plans support students in high school and what happens in college?
Say that one more time.
How do the 504 plan and the IEP support students from K through 12, and what happens once they are at the point where they're transitioning from high school to college?
So again, the IEP doesn't go past high school.
Right.
However, you can use the IEP plan as a starting point because
Mhm.
although it has like academic goals and specialized instruction, there is a part that has accommodations in an IEP.
Right.
And so a parent can use that as a pointing, a guide. With a 504 can go into college because, again, it is required by the Rehabilitation Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act. So, for example, with myself, I can have a 504 at work because I have asthma, I have allergies, I have a couple other health issues, but because I control them with my medicine,
Mhm.
I'm not going to push for accommodations. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And
Mhm.
my principal knows that I have this. So, he works with me.
Mhm.
With the 50, so in order for any accommodations to move on to college, the student has to advocate for themselves. Like in the school, teachers,
Mhm.
principals, anybody in the education field, along with the parent, can refer a student for an IEP or a
Mhm.
504. But
Right.
once they graduate, the student has to advocate for themselves and reach out to the college to provide the information for them to, get the accommodations at the college level. They have to become their advocate.
I sometimes look at it like this: when you have a student or a child that has this prescription, whether it be any type of medication, while that student is underage, it's the parent's responsibility to make sure they
Absolutely.
take the medication, they get the prescriptions filled, they pay for the
Absolutely.
prescriptions. But once the student gets to a point where they're off and out of the house, it's then up to that student, that child who's now a young adult, to be able to take the ball running and take control of what they need. So they have to be taught how to advocate. And that's this question that I had down the line. But that brings me to the next point. In terms of navigating from high school to college, what is the first thing that a parent should do when they realize that their student is in the 11th to 10th, 11th, 12th grade, getting ready to transition out of high school and potentially go on to college?
So what I have told families that want to, they want their student to pursue college, and even family members, is that when you go on those college tours, you need to be finding out where the office. So some colleges call it the Office of Disability, some call it the Accessibility Office.
Right.
So when they go on tours, I highly recommend that they stop off at the disability office or the accessibility office and speak to the director or the assistant director or someone in that office to get the information that they need. How would my student go about getting accommodations in college?
Hmm.
What forms do we have to provide as documentation? Do we have to fill out an application? What is the criteria that we need in order for my child to get the accommodations at the college level?
Hmm.
So
What kind of documentation should parents begin to gather? Or I know that a lot of times when you get to the point where they're going on to college and they're reviewing whether or not they can continue with the accommodations that were granted in high school, they like to see some updated information, like the psychosocials and a lot of. What can you suggest to parents who are transitioning or thinking about trying to prepare their student for college success to start gathering in terms of documentation?
so every college varies.
Mhm.
For example, I have a friend whose daughter goes to George Mason, that they went ahead and accepted her 504 plan.
Mhm.
And there might have been some paperwork that they needed to complete.
Mhm.
Um, with another college like Alabama State, they don't accept the 504, but they have not an application, but forms that you have to fill out. One of the forms has to go to the diagnosing psychologist or psychiatrist or therapist for them to fill out to say what your diagnosis is. So it varies at each college. So that's why I said it's very important for parents and the student to visit that accessibility office or disability office so they can find out what they are asking for, because every college asks for something different.
Would you say that the colleges, for the most part, if preparation's been, if you've been preparing for this, would you say that the colleges, to a degree, more or less, will continue on with the similar services that that the student was getting while they were in high school?
Absolutely. So, just to give you examples of some most common accommodations in the college on the collegiate level, additional time of exams, different testing location like separate setting, exam reader, enlarged print, extra white space on exams, preferred seating, having someone to take the notes for them, allowing digital textbooks or workbooks, and preparation materials. And that's just a few. But like, for example, if a student comes in like with a medical, hearing or visually impaired or diabetes or asthma or epilepsy, that their accommodations are going to look a little different. But these are the most common accommodations that colleges will provide. And again, to answer your question, if the accommodations were on their 504 or even on their IEP, you know what I'm saying? The colleges should be able to accept those accommodations.
Right. One thing I'd like to point out is what a lot of times in terms of advocating, just to jump back a question or two, when in terms of students advocating for themselves, parents or guardians need to understand that by the time your student goes to school, you can help them from the sidelines, but that student has to, not only does it have to be on file in the disability office or the accessibility office, each professor at the start of the semester has to know that you are afforded accommodations. You can't rely on the fact that you got the accommodations and the disability office knows. It is the responsibility of the student to go to every student in the beginning of the semester, not when they start falling behind, at the beginning of the semester. You can very discreetly or very you can even email them, but you have to make it known at each class, at the beginning of each semester, that you are afforded these types of accommodations so that they can be provided to you. Because if you don't tell them, they don't know, right?
Absolutely.
It's not the disabilities office. It's not the disabilities office's responsibility to go to every class that you have and make the professors aware. That's on the student, and they have to know that.
Well, that's a yes and no question. So, for example, I know with Morehouse and I know with Alabama State that the accessibility office or disability office will send out an email to those professors and have the student CC'd on it.
Oh, will they? Good.
Yes. So again, each office is different on the collegiate level. That's why it's important when they go on tours, that needs to be one of their stops.
Yes.
Because they're all different. Now, with my girlfriend's daughter school, George Mason, it was her responsibility, my friend's daughter's responsibility, to inform her professors that she had a 504. So again, it's just different with each college.
Okay.
And so
I also go ahead.
I was going to say that even though with Alabama State and Morehouse providing the professors with an email and a copy of the accommodations, I also told my students and my families that do attend those schools that it is your responsibility, even though the director sent it, you need to follow up whether it's in person or it's in an email, to introduce yourself. Ask
Right.
them, can you have 5 or 10 minutes before class or after class, so
Exactly.
that they can put a name with a face, as
Mhm.
well as the accommodations.
It is also, yeah, I know you touched on it in terms of making trips to the college and talking to the disability office before they decide or they go on campus. Parents and guardians should also know when they're helping with their children making these decisions as to where they're going to go. Some schools are stronger than others in terms of meeting the
Absolutely.
needs of students, and that's very important. You also want to consider the size of the school, the size of the classes,
Yes.
and I guess you got to do your due diligence in terms of seeing who who will be able to accommodate your child best. You don't want them to go to a school where there's like 20,000 kids and they don't have the ability to speak up for themselves and be able to demand that they get the accommodations, because it will really be on them when they fall behind in those classes. And the accommodations are basically there so that you can have every opportunity to be on an even keel with everybody else, so that they can address whatever accommodations that are needed. So that's important. You got to know the school and the strength of the school's program, in terms of not
Absolutely.
program, but in terms of them being able to disseminate the services that you're afforded, because some
Right.
schools are better at that than others. I mean,
Right.
they have some schools that are strictly for students who have disabilities. You get
Absolutely.
regular degrees, but the majority of their students, if not all, have some type of disability. So there are schools that are not restrictive because they don't restrict the students, but they have I guess 100% rate of being able to service kids with disabilities. But then there are schools that you're on your own.
Right.
Wherever it is that you decide to go, you have to make sure that you navigate that properly, because you can't come at the middle of the semester, at the end of the semester, saying, "Oh, I didn't get this and they didn't do this," because
Absolutely.
you're gonna be in a world of trouble.
Right.
Um, I was gonna
Now,
say, go ahead.
one other thing also, each college um, might require you to resubmit certain documents. So, for
Mhm,
example, with, I think, Morehouse, you don't do it every semester, but you do it yearly. And I'll have
mhm,
to check with my student and families about that. But with Alabama State in particular, you have to submit paperwork every semester.
mhm,
So, for example,
mhm,
some of my students who go to Alabama that have accommodations, we found out that when they submitted their paperwork for the fall, when they were freshmen,
mhm,
we were told that they would get an email from the director
mhm,
um, right before first semester was over, and they didn't have to fill out the whole packet, but it was just maybe one or two documents that they had to fill out to say that, yes, going into spring semester, they would need those accommodations again. Now, they
they
didn't
can
have to show proof again, like
right.
get their clinician or provider to write that, but
Mhm,
filling out that form saying that, hey, when spring comes up, I need it. Then if they're
mhm,
going to summer school, you need to fill it out again for summer school to say that you
mhm,
needed those accommodations.
mhm,
So every semester, including
mhm,
summer, they had
mhm.
to fill out at least 2 to 3 pages forms saying that they still needed the accommodations and if they were the same.
And
Whereas others made you do it, for the whole year.
And on a side note, this doesn't have anything to do, not any, it's not particularly related to what you're saying. A lot of times people don't realize that um, federally, voc rehab, I don't know what it would be called in people's individual states.
Mhm.
Where I am, it's called Access VR. There are sometimes even monies tied to your student having a disability, and sometimes they'll pay a portion of the tuition. Sometimes they'll cover books and cover part of the room and board. So there are things that need to be put in place and explored before, when you start thinking about college is when you need to start thinking about how you're going to navigate this
Absolutely.
the next phase of their life, in terms of helping them have accommodations that help them on an even playing field.
Right.
I would encourage parents to reach out to their local Voc Rehab agency, which is exclusive to
Absolutely.
their state. I don't know what it would be called, but you can just do some digging around. If you have an IEP, you probably on that road, but just make
Right.
sure you dig around, because a lot of times there are not financial rewards, but there's assistance. A lot of
Yes.
times they'll maybe provide a laptop, especially if you need assisted technology.
Yes.
There's so many things out there that parents can avail themselves of in terms of helping their students so that they can be more successful in college. And also, I wanted to point out that some students, when they get to the college age, they may have this disability, and they may have had an IEP for a very long time, or a 504 for a very long time. But now that they're in college, they don't want to stand out. They don't want to get the services that they need. And I have to say, please understand that no one has to know. Like, no
Right.
one has to know. You tell the professor, you tell the disability office that you have these accommodations, and even though you're taking a test in a separate location, the rest of the class doesn't even know that you're taking a test in another location. This can
Right.
be a very private thing, so you don't have to feel like you have to broadcast this to everybody. We do have a question in the chat. I'm going to encourage you guys, if you have questions, please put them in the chat while Ms. Cole is here. This is the time. I have a question from Miss Kenya Winston. She says, why do you think some administrators push back on having a 504 or IEP put in place for a student?
That's a good question. It varies, by school, by state, um, by um, by school districts. I really don't know, but I know what we do in our school district is that we first, when a teacher or a parent brings a concern, we ask them, have they been diagnosed? Do they have a disability? If they don't, when we have a 504 meeting, we look at everything that's presented, and then if we need to get our school psychologist involved to do what's called a Section 504 evaluation, that's what we do in our district. I'm not sure what others do and why there's pushback.
I have to say, and I'm not the professional here, but I have to say, in my travels and just learning, just picking up information, because this is just what I've been doing for the last 20
Right.
something years. I have to say that I don't know that there's pushback, but I can say this, that if you feel that you're getting pushback, you always, first off, the parent has a big part of this process, in terms of getting your students the needs. If you feel like you need the IEP, and if you can't get it done through the school, you can also always go the private route. And once you get private testing, you can bring that testing to the school, and they're basically forced to deal with this. I don't know that they can
And
just push you aside.
right. And so again, every district, every state is different. The only other reason why they may give pushback is because maybe what the parent is seeing at home, it's not being displayed in school.
That might be,
And
sure.
if it's not being displayed in school, we can't put something in place that we
Right.
as educators don't see. That's the only other reason why I would say there might be pushback, because the school is
I can
not
see that.
seeing it.
And if they're not displaying these things in school, then I don't know that they would want to put resources towards all the evaluations that need to be done if they don't see any
Right.
evidence of this. So you might have, if my recommendation to Miss Winston would be, if you seriously see something that you feel like needs to be addressed and they just won't evaluate your student, reach out to your health insurance if possible, and maybe you can
Absolutely.
get some private testing done that way. Or there are even people who don't take any type of health insurance that you
They do
might have to
sliding
pay out of
scales.
pocket, the sliding scales. But there are resources. Don't, if you think you see something where your student might have a learning difference of any sort, I would not let them push me aside. Pursue it, and when you hit a brick wall, go around them. Make sure you get it done somehow, some way, and even if it has to be done privately. But Ms. Winston has another question. She says, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about 504 and IEP plans? 504 and IEPs.
So is she meaning on the in the high school, elementary, middle school level, or collegiate level?
Well, she didn't say, so why don't we take it from the high school level, and then we'll go into the collegiate level.
Well, for an IEP, the big misconception would be that it will follow you to college,
Mhm.
and because it won't.
Mhm.
IEPs are designed to work with students in the from the ages of 3 to 21, or when they graduate from high school, whatever one comes first. But again, remember I said that even though IEPs do not carry over to college, you
Mhm.
can use them as a starting point, because there will be some accommodations
Right.
on that IEP
Mhm.
that the parent can use to get them accommodations.
Mhm.
So that would be the biggest misconception of IEPs. Um, Not sure about any misconceptions about 504, because again, they are covered under the Rehabilitation Act and the American Disabilities Act, and those accommodations can go over to college and even in the workplace.
There is a misconception that if I might add, there was a time when an IEP was a stigma. This was years ago, but I have to say that I think that we've grown from that space, and
Absolutely.
yeah, it's not a punishment. What it is just letting people just learn at a pace where they can, giving them the help that they can, so that they can at least be at a place where they have a fighting chance, right?
Right.
Especially if you can identify and verify that there is an actual disability. But I encourage parents, not, you don't want to jump at it if you don't need it, but if the student needs an IEP, I encourage people to research that, because why should they struggle with something that can they have the opportunity to be students, great students, just like anyone else, if they have the right accommodations in place.
Yep,
So
the right
when you
tool.
see people try, right, the right tools, when you see people trying to do it the best that they can to avoid an IEP, I just think that's such a disservice to your student, especially if you want them to go on to college, because incrementally the work just gets harder, and where they have a lot of instruction in high school and they're babied a lot in high school, you let that go unchecked, and now you get them into a college. It just gets harder. There's not as much hand holding, and a lot of times where they could be successful students, them not having a certain accommodations in place could hurt them. So I personally, if that runs along the line of anything she might have been asking, then me personally, I feel like if you feel like your student needs it, by all means pursue it. But we do have another question.
Okay.
It says, sorry I joined this late. Sorry I joined late and this may have been answered. If my son has an IEP and it won't carry over to college, what should he take to disability services to get accommodations? If you can address that again.
So you're correct. It will not go over to IEP, does not carry over to the collegiate level. However, when you go on college tours, or if you've already been on the college tours, I would definitely reach out to the college to find out the number to the accessibility office or disability office, and speak with the director yourself to find out what are the criterias, what documentations do you need for your child to be able to receive accommodations on the college level. Like I shared before, each college does things a little differently. So, for example, George Mason, where one of my friend's daughter goes to, they will take the actual 504 and use that to put together the accommodations at their school. At Alabama State, it's just getting a provider or a clinician or a therapist to fill out a form and sign off stating what the student's disability is. And then, if you have medical documentation from, their primary care physician or a specialist doctor, you just need to reach out to the college and ask them what documents are required for your child to be able to get accommodations on the collegiate level.
Okay, she followed up with that by saying he's working with Voc Rehab, with
Okay.
vocational rehab. So they're putting together a plan for to document a plan for him. So which is a great step.
It absolutely is.
Are there any questions students and families should be asking when touring these questions to ensure that support is available, or so that they can be able to gauge the appropriate level of support that might be available when helping them make a decision on whether or not the school is an appropriate setting for them?
So again, the questions that I have helped family members and friends is definitely asking them, you know, what criteria, you know, what documentation do I need to show proof that my child has a disability? Um, Also seeing if, you know, just kind of asking them about the different accommodations that your child may have on an IEP or 504, and if they're able to accommodate them with those accommodations. And just, you know, asking them, because majority of the disability and accessibility office have pamphlets. So the pamphlet will give you step by step, you know, what's the purpose of their office and how to be able to get those accommodations or services for your child at the collegiate level. And also know that it is no longer the responsibility of the parent or the public school. Your child has to advocate for themselves and go contact the accessibility or disability office on their own to advocate for those accommodations to be put in place.
That's a big one, and I always encourage families to start teaching them advocacy skills, advocacy skills early, because you don't want to, and a lot of times, you know, parents do a lot of the work for the students, and that's, you know, that's what you're there for in high school, but we neglect to teach them all of the things that they might be entitled to in terms of how to address their disability, how to
Right.
ask for accommodations, how to navigate it. And there's so many, so it's so involved that it's really not possible to teach them everything that you've amassed in terms of knowledge along the way. But you have to be able to fortify them with enough to be able to go there to that school, and also let them know, you know, listen, have me on speaker when you go into the office and you talk to them. I may not be able to speak to them directly because you are an adult, but you can certainly bring me in on speaker. You know, there's
Right.
certain ways that you have to help your student, because a lot of times part of this disability might be the fact that they can't advocate properly for themselves. So you
Right.
want to be able to give them as many like as the tool, and make sure that the tools are there so that they can find success in college, because a lot of these kids are very smart and there's no reason why they cannot complete a college degree, but they just need a little bit of help along the way, which is why we wanted to be able to bring this information. But lastly, before I stop grilling you, and if
It's
anybody has
okay.
anything in any questions, now's the time. She's here. You know,
But I
now's the time.
also want to say, Yvonne, that
Mhm.
it is very important. If parents haven't started teaching their children how to advocate, they need to start now.
Yep,
Um, know that at the college level, a parent can have their child sign a FERPA
sure can.
where they can speak on their behalf. And
Mhm.
I do highly recommend it, especially for students with disabilities, just because, you know, if one of their disabilities is advocating, speaking up, you know, they have social anxiety, the
Mhm.
parent can step in, and definitely for the first year, you know, because even if you teach your children how to advocate in high school, you might
Mhm.
want to assist them along the way their first year just to make sure that they got it down.
And when you said first year, that made me think of something else. If a student, because of their disability rating, or the fact that they do have a disability and they need accommodations, a lot of times the benefits that they get can take them into a fifth year, especially when it comes to voc rehab. There's so many types of protections out there, so they don't have to be trying to take like 6 credits a semester, I mean 6 classes a semester, trying to just be able to graduate on time.
Right.
There's no push for them to be able to push themselves to the max when they may need a smaller caseload, not a caseload, but a smaller course load.
Courses,
So,
right.
they might be able to do the 12 semesters, each 12 credits per semester, knowing that they may be able to get additional funding through Voc Rehab to be able to pay for that additional year that they may need. They may not be able to graduate in 4 years. And,
Right.
and it's nice to be able to know that some of those things are available, but you got to do your research. And I would not put this
Absolutely.
on them. Parents, you have to be involved. Guardians, you have to be involved. If some kids have to navigate this by themselves, but if you do have a student who has disabilities of any sort, it doesn't have to be a learning disability. It could be of any sort. You have to help be the advocate and teach them how to advocate for themselves and continue to check on them while they're in school. Don't just hand this to them,
Absolutely.
right? Because a lot of times, they'll get to school and they'll be like, I don't need that. Yes, you do need that. You do need that. People don't realize this, and this has nothing to do with school. If you have an IEP and it's something as simple as dyslexia, you can get extended time on a city exam, on a state exam for
Right.
employment. You can have your driver's license, the written test. You can have that written taken in audio form. So there's
Different. Yes.
so many accommodations out there, not just in college, but in the world. But if no one tells them, it's not as easy to find out information if you're not aggressive, if you're not 100% confident, and you don't know how to ask the hard questions, or you might be a little intimidated, as most students are when they first enter a college campus. So I would encourage people to just work with your student to the degree that they can. Maybe get them a good mentor if you fall short or you don't know how, but you got to make sure you help them stay in the game, because there's no reason why these kids can't complete a 4-year program. If
Absolutely.
they have the accommodations that they need and they're using them, there's no reason why they can't. But I did want to ask you, in terms of resources and tips, if you knew of any particular scholarships that might be national that you know of offhand that parents can explore. Also, uh, if you were able to share a success story from a student that you saw them make the transition from high school to college, and because of the accommodations, they came on the other side, with their 4-year degree.
Right. So I do not know of any particular scholarships for students with disabilities, but they are a lot. There are a lot out there. It would just be doing research like you would for any other scholarship, just putting in scholarships for disabilities, also speaking, because I'm not in high school counselor, I'm at the middle school level. I would definitely reach out to your child's high school counselor, or a lot of high schools have a college counselor now. So reaching out to your specific counselor or the college counselor to see if they have information about scholarships with disabilities, because they usually get a plethora of information sent to them from different people, that have scholarships. And, that's the route I would go. Far as a success story, I have a few where I helped parents, because I was elementary and middle. I haven't went up to high school yet for school counseling, but I do have some parents who kept in contact with me because of their student building a relationship with me. And I definitely helped them to navigate, the accessibility office and disability office at the collegiate level, where I kind of did some footwork and reached out to those offices for them. And because of doing that and, guiding that parent and that student to complete the paperwork and submit it, and encouraging my students to advocate, even if you didn't want to talk to your professor in person, contacting them through email,
Sure.
and then once you get comfortable to meet with them in person. And so one in particular was so excited to contact me because when she emailed the professor, just introducing herself, telling the professor, you should have gotten my accommodations. the professor wanted to meet with her and, told her, either before or after, whichever one was comfortable. And so when the professor sat down and talked to her, the professor opened up about having a child with a disability, where that child unfortunately could not go to college because they had a severe disability. So she had to have someone come in, 24 hours around the clock. Child was in a wheelchair. That really made the student feel comfortable, and she made a connection with that teacher, that professor, which that professor and her, even when she finished her course, they kept in touch. And that professor helped her to navigate if there was a professor giving her a hard time, and went on to graduate and is doing successfully. And, I have other students, it just depends on what college you go to. And you being an advocate, I have had some that didn't have the best of experience starting off, but in the end, they did.
Okay.
So
that human connection, it's something about the human connection, compassion.
Yes. And even with the one who reached out, found out that her professor had a student with a disability and couldn't go to school and had to have 24-hour care.
Right.
Well, math class, you're supposed to have certain calculators, right? And she had a particular one from high school, which they said was equivalent or required at the college level. But this particular professor for her math class wanted a basic calculator or something. And so the mom ordered it, but it wasn't going to come in time. And my student didn't have a car. She's a couple hours away from home. And I told her, I said, go to I said, first start off in the math department. They usually keep extra calculators.
Sure.
He said they didn't have any more of those because, those were outdated. They upgraded to a new calculator, but it wasn't the one that the professor was using. So then I told her, go to the disability office and talk to the director. That director the next day went and took her own money and bought my former student, the calculator, so that she didn't have to stress, worry, because her disability was anxiety. She went out and got it. And then once hers came in the mail, she went back and gave it to the disability office and thanked her, even though she told her she didn't need to return it. She said, I wanted to return it so that if there's another student who's in the same situation as me, you'll have to give to them. So again, it's just about making connections and building those relationships.
And a lot of times, I mentioned, of course, a lot of times if she had more time, Voc Rehab will pay for those things. They have a budget for that. So yeah. I'm going to see if, in fact, I'm going to encourage people who are signed on now or who come on later. If you know of any tips or any pointers that you can add to the chat that might help people, from years to come from now who might stumble across this thing next year, the year after, please put them in the chat, because there's so many unknowns. It's such a wide and broad field that you can never know everything. So if you found something in your little corner of the country where you live that they're doing, and it's a national program, if you know that somebody else might benefit, it'd be fabulous if you could just add it to the comments so that somebody might benefit along the way. So I'm going to thank you here. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. You've been a fabulous guest, and thank you for being patient. I'm so sorry about the beginning of I'm gonna get it together.
It is okay. But I want to thank you for pushing me, because like I told you when you reached out to me, I like to help from behind. I'm not a person who likes to speak in front of big audiences.
And look at you. And look at you.
Right. And this was my first time doing a podcast, which was a little different because it just looks like you and I having a conversation, even though I know people are, tuning in. I like to work in the background. That's my niche. That's my passion. But I thank you along with my husband, because after I told him, I was like, this lady named Yvonne reached out to me. She wants me. I was like, he was like, go for it. And so I was like, okay, I would go for it. But I thank you for reaching out to me. this kind of helped me as
Mhm.
well. And
We
also,
like to get our strengths from the group. We have 30,000 members in our group, and there's some talent in there. And if I got to pick them out one at a time, I'm gonna do that.
right. And so again, if I come across any scholarships or scholarships particularly for students with disabilities, I will definitely make sure I put them in the group, the Facebook group.
Please do, because there are students out there and parents out there who may be working, or they might have missed it. They didn't set a timer, but they can always come back to the group. Number one, I'm always going to encourage people to to advocate for the group, put information in the group, because we like to be a resource to tell others about the group. And we need subscribers. So if everybody could subscribe, whoever's hearing this in the listening audience from now until whenever YouTube is no longer, we do need subscribers. It doesn't cost you anything to subscribe. Just hit the subscribe button. We need subscribers, and we need people to watch our videos so that so that YouTube knows that there's an audience for this information.
Absolutely.
So if you know of anybody who needs this, there's also other topics in there that are to me of importance, and I'm going to try to continue to gain more people to come on board and spread some information, just like you did for tonight yourself. So I consider this like a form of community service. So I thank you for your service, and hopefully you've been able to do some good to somebody who may not even be in the chat. They may be too embarrassed to ask a question, or they may be shy. Hopefully something you said tonight, and it's going to be perpetual because they'll be able to listen to it as many times as they want to, or whenever they want to. Hopefully this does some good for somebody, and I thank you. But I'm going to end now because I know people don't like to listen all night long. And we're going to find some more people from the group to find out who we can highlight next week.
All right. Thank you so much, Yvonne.
Have a wonderful evening.
You do the same.
Okay. So guys, there you have it. We have had another interview with someone else spreading some information so that we can grow in our community in terms of getting these kids where they need to be, helping them meet the goals that they need to meet to be able to be successful college students. Because what we need is these kids to go into their schools, programs, whether they're 2-year or 4-year, with the tools that they need. Just like your students are going to need books, just like they're going to need, just like the school supplies that they needed back when they were in high school, elementary school, and middle school. They still need them same things. They still gonna need the what do they call it? The lined books, not the loose leaf paper. They don't do that anymore, but they're still gonna need the pens, the pencils, and everything else. So along with that, if they need a little bit of a help along the way, accommodations is what we're gonna help them get. I have something else in the chat. It says, this was great. Thank you for being a wealth of knowledge. Shamika Cole, you did a great job. Well, I'm hoping that she'll be able to hear this on the playback if she does listen. This was awesome information. Thanks so much. Oh my goodness. So you guys were listening. Listen, guys, please subscribe to the channel and tell a friend. If you know anyone out there who has a student with disabilities, especially if they're in the 10th and the 11th grade, they need to start now. So if possible, if you could share that we're here, especially if they think that they might be going to an HBCU, tell them about our Facebook group. We're 30,000 family members strong, and we're trying to get up to just as many podcasts members strong. Like I said a minute or two ago, it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't hurt. But please go ahead and hit the subscribe. If you like the vibe, just subscribe. We're here. We're vibrant. We're growing. We're learning. And we want to be able to touch as many people as we can. So you're going to continue to see me in the Facebook group begging for people to join until every one of you do so. And if you get tired of hearing me beg, just join. Just subscribe. And then just be like, good, that did that. So she can stop asking people to subscribe. So yeah, so that's what we want to do. We want to let YouTube know that we're out here and we're spreading good information. But I'm going to end now because it's almost an hour and I know people get tired. So look forward to hearing from us again soon, and good luck. Take care. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Black, brown, and HBCU bound. Your source for news you can use. Let's shine a light on the 207 HBCUs where culture meets excellence. of today. We're here to guide you every step of the way. For the scholars, the change makers, the voices we see. HBCU pride building history. 107 strong, a legacy profound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. Voices that echo, stories that resound. Highlighting the legacy, shining so bright. Empowering futures, igniting the light. Black, brown, and HBCU bound. Building the bridge, breaking new ground. Together we rise, hear the sound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. Scholarship, dreams, and a campus so alive. From culture to courage, where futures thrive. For parents and students, the vision is clear. We've got your back, it's your time of year. Every story we tell, every voice we lift, unlocking potential, the greatest gift. Tune in for the wisdom, the stories untold, the rhythm of progress, the spirit so bold. Your podcast for knowledge, where dreams are unbound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. We're black, brown, and HBCU bound. Voices that echo, stories that resound. Highlighting the legacy, shining so bright. Your power and futures, igniting the light.